Hey guys, welcome to this tank review of the Japanese Tier 8 medium tank, the STA-1. Let's take a quick look at this tank. So it looks pretty ridiculous if you ask me. The gun seems quite short compared to the rest of the tank, but it does have a nice muzzle flush at the end, so that looks pretty cool. One thing you'll notice is how tall the tank is at the back, and also how big the back of the hull actually is. Let's just compare it to the Type 59 in size. So pretty comparable. It seems a bit taller. The Indian is of course much bigger, and the Pershing is also a bit bigger. So let's run down the basic statistics of this tank. So as you can see, it has 35% protection, which equals terrible armor. As you can see, pretty much nothing is going to bounce you. The strongest part of your armor is your gun mantlet, as I'm going to be showing you an armor inspector in a second, but apart from that, don't expect anything but the miracle bounce due to RNG gods. The engine of the tank is pretty good. It has a power to weight ratio of approximately 16 horsepower per ton, which is actually okay considering the jump that you're taking from the Chiri, which was absolutely sluggish to drive. The traverse speed is also pretty good, and you do get the feeling that this tank is quite a bit more maneuverable than the Tier 7 Chiri. So the redeeming feature of this tank is the gun. The gun is really good. It has decent accuracy at 0.35, decent aim time at 2.3, but it does have great penetration compared to other medium tank guns, such as the T44, the Type 59 Premium, the Super Pershing, and you can really make use of it. Another feature of this tank that's really nice is the good view range of 260 meters. So I accentuate that in this tank by equipping it with binoculars to give 25% extra vision when I'm stationary. This is a setup that I've been testing a bit on the Chiri as well. I didn't find it quite as useful on the Chiri because you could carry more in the Chiri because of the burst damage potential. But this tank, I feel it needs the binoculars instead of the coated optics, because often you will need to be second line or maybe even third line shooting at long ranges at the enemy. I kind of play this tank the way I play my Leopard 1, and I do feel that both tanks have a lot of similarities. So talking about the gun, let's take a quick look at the DPM comparison compared to the other Tier 8 medium tanks. So you can see the best DPM of the Tier 8 medium tanks is the Indian Panther, but the STA-1 comes in pretty close, 4.4% worse behind the Indian Panther, with roughly 2000 DPM, base DPM, and approximately 2150 rammer DPM. So comparing it to the other Tier 8 medium tanks, it doesn't get a significant boost as you might expect it would need because of the very poor armor. So all of these other tanks, they have redeeming features. The Indian Panther has a pretty strong turret. It also has decent hull armor compared to the STA-1. The Panther 2 has great armor compared to the STA-1. The Super Pershing has ridiculously good armor compared to the STA-1. This is one of the points that I feel wargaming could change a bit going forward. That is increasing the rate of fire just maybe by 5 to 10%, just to make it a bit more competitive and give it best in class DPM. So let's take a look at the armor profile of this tank. So here we go. This is the STA-1 in Armor Inspector. I have selected the T-34-85 to shoot at it, because just to accentuate how bad the armor is. So let's just test it on the hull, and we'll see that instantly we are having 100% penetration opportunities here. 77 millimeters from the front. The turret, 81. The only place that you're reliably gonna bounce anything in this tank is if they shoot this part around the gun. So the gun mantlet, which acts as spaced armor along with the turret. So this is the only place you're gonna bounce unless you're very lucky and someone shoots, for example, here, and you get an auto ricochet due to the 70% rule. But even with the auto ricochet, you can see it has these shoulders just like the FV215B. That means that you can never really hold down, and you definitely can't side scrape in this tank. Anything is going to be able to penetrate you. One tip when you meet these tanks is, if you have a gun that's got good penetration on its HE rounds, is you can try to contest the armor here on the side of the STA-1. You might even dare to contest it on the turret, although the turret has a bit of funny angling around it. You can see it's quite well rounded, so you might not have as much success with HE there, but the big weak spot for HE shooters is the back of the tank. So even at an extreme angle like this, we're getting 22 millimeters of effective armor, which is absolutely diabolical. Very, very bad armor, and do not count on this tank to bounce anything. So another great factor about this gun is it has excellent gun depression. You can see we can take it to 10 degrees, and the only problem is it doesn't go all the way around. So if you're reversing, you can see when we get to here, the gun starts going up. And that's because over the back of the tank you get 0 degrees of gun depression, but actually get gun elevation instead, because the back of the tank is quite tall. Another thing that I don't like about this tank is the lack of gun elevation. You can see you can only take this gun 13 degrees up. Considering that you might be engaging someone at an upward slope, for example on Middleburg, if you're in the city and they are up on the hills, then you will have a tough time shooting up at them unless you are very far away. So without further ado, let's jump into some gameplay and see how this tank performs in action. Here we go with the first gameplay of this tank review. I'm on dead rail, and if you've seen some of my other medium tank videos, you'll know I like to do a spotting run across the middle, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do in this tank as well. So in this tank, because of the great gun depression of 10 degrees, you actually have the possibility to land some shots across the middle ridge. But as you'll see in a second, I can't really decide which enemy to shoot at, so I instead just end up shooting directly into the ground. But yeah, so we have a 43, we have a T-34, we have someone else. Actually, I'm standing there for a lot too much time. You should never do this unless you have a snapshot opportunity where you just can basically take the shot within a second or two. And I was up there for like 3, maybe 4 seconds, which is just too long because it gives the enemy the opportunity to land some big shots into you. And considering the absolutely terrible armor that this tank has, it doesn't really matter where they hit you because they're going to penetrate. So I see that my team is along the rails primarily, and not down in Death Alley, as I like to call it. So I decided to push around to the rail area and get into a bit of a position where I have the option to take some long distance shots at the enemies. Because this tank, it's not really good for a frontline as a frontline tank. You need to stay at a distance, and this game is going to prove exactly what I mean. Because even though your DPM is good and the tank stats in general are okay, you just don't have the option to bounce anything. So you really need to play it very, very carefully. And I do feel that this tank, it plays a lot like the tier 10 German medium tank, the Leopard 1, because you really need to stay at a distance and make sure that the enemies are not focusing on you. Otherwise, you're gonna have a very, very hard time in this tank. So I see that the T-43 and the KV-5 are all the way at the back of the map. So I decided I need to do something against them before advancing and helping the team with the others. So I take out the 43 with a snapshot to the turret, but I do take 2 shots in return. So what I do here is actually I'm pulling back behind this bush where this KV-5 is gonna have a hard time seeing me, and I use the bush to accentuate the excellent camouflage values that this tank has. So when I'm playing like this, the KV-5, he doesn't even have the opportunity to see me. Not before he gets close enough, or before I get too close to the bush. So I'm very concerned here. The KV-1S is pushing aggressively, the KV-5 is pushing aggressively, and I have a KV-3 and a T-34 coming up on the other side. So I decided it's time to make a run for it. I do a bit of driving into the trains because, yeah, I was a bit nervous at the time. and wasn't really focusing on getting away in the most efficient manner, which was a bit of a mistake in hindsight. But now I've created some distance between myself and the enemy, and now I'm going to go up to the middle area of the right side of the map and try to use my excellent gun depression to land some shots into the enemies. So if I was in a tank like the T-54, the T-44 even, I would clearly have been much more aggressive here. I would have probably stayed down and played it a lot more actively than what I end up doing in this game. So I try to land another shot in the KV-5. The KV-5, he's down on pretty low health, and I want to get him out of the game so I can focus on the T-34 and the KV-3. And I put load some heat shells to maximize the penetration, but unfortunately he gets away just in the last second. So I can see that we are down to 4 tanks. The enemy has 4 tanks as well. I know I have almost full health Jagdpanther right next to me, but our Carnarvon, he's not having a great game, and he's really getting punished down there. So I need to go and help against the KV-3 and the T-34 without exposing my tank too much. And that's something that is pretty hard to do in this tank, because the armor is just so terrible that even if you're only exposing your turret as I am right now, you'll still have a high possibility of receiving the damage from the enemies. So I do land a few good shots on the KV-3, and I see that the Cheeto, he's pushing out. I try to go for the tracking shot. I get the track, but unfortunately he manages to repair his tracks and go back before I get to another chance to shoot him. So you actually saw me take a bounce there from the Cheeto, and the only place that any tank is gonna reliably bounce you is if they shoot directly at the gun mantlet, and you'll actually see two more instances of that in a few minutes, because I miraculously pull off a bounce from the T-34 and also from the KV-3. They should penetrate me 99% of the time, but of course if I'm at an above 70-degree angle and they are shooting at me, then they can't penetrate me. So that just means that I have the option of keeping the distance and making sure that I get the shots in the enemy. I see the T-34 has moved into the field, and I miraculously bounce his shot. He's fired, so that means I know that I have a much better reload than he does. But the KV-3 also pops out. I know that he's down to low health, so I load a heat to take him out. And I managed to bounce another shot from him. And they must have been hitting either a very, very angled part of my tank, or they must have been hitting my very, very thick gun mantlet. And the gun mantlet is very small, so you're gonna be having immense amounts of luck if you're gonna bounce anything with it. So anyway, this game was pretty good. It showed how I think you should play this tank as a second line support, and I did manage to rack up 4,000 damage. So without further ado, let's get into the next gameplay. So for the second gameplay, I'm on Himmelstorf, and as you can see, it's actually a pretty tough matchup for me. The enemies have some strong heavy tanks, and they also have an SU-152 who can really put the hurt on me if he has the 152mm derp cannon. But what this game really shows is just how good you can perform in this tank if you manage to be not the main focus of the enemies. So that means that you try to let your teammates who have more armor than you take the front line, and perhaps even take the beating for you, because you have pretty good DPM, and you can really use the high penetration on this gun to punish almost all types of enemies. So I'm pushing around all the way at the back, pretty aggressively actually, and trying to see if I can get some spots from afar on the enemies. I try to stay as far away from the roads as I can, going all the way to the map border, simply just to make sure, or to maximize the possibility that the enemies don't spot me. So it looks like the enemy have made a full circle around the map. So I decided to push down these roads and try to get some shots. So the IS-3, he's moving pretty aggressively forward, and it's a bit tricky actually for me to get a shot here, but I do manage to find a small sneak hole. Unfortunately, my first shot didn't hit, but the second one is a bit better and does connect. So you can see none of the enemies are focusing on me right now, and this is the perfect situation for the STA-1, because the armor is so bad, you really need, in order to keep your gun singing and keep blazing out the damage, you need the enemies to be focused on someone else. Alternatively, you need the enemy to not have spotted you. So I push through the streets. I can see that my enemy, they're clustering and trying to hold the corner up at the top left part of the map. And I decide to go around and see if I can make a flanking move, helping my team out and securing the win. So the AT-7 here, he's also a pretty tough target, but he's not focusing on me. I managed to take his tracks off, and one of my teammates comes along, and I guess he's gonna finish him off. Nope. So I finish him off, and now we have the rear of the IS-3. The IS-3, he's not paying attention to us, not at all. He's completely tunnel visioning on the other player, and he doesn't realize that there are two mediums right behind him who are ready to dish out the damage. This is the perfect situation for the STA-1. This is like literally, this is STA-1 ABC. So you can see the enemies are pushing down. Our Tiger 2, he's doing a great job in holding back the enemies, and they are not focusing on me at all. I can, from the side here, I can engage them, and with my great penetration, I have no problems getting through the sides of these tanks, none whatsoever. So I decide that the SU, he's the most dangerous enemy for me, but he does manage to get into cover before I finish him off. But the Tiger 1 doesn't, and now it's the IS-6 who's on a roll. I don't manage to get a shot, but I do manage to penetrate the T-34-85, taking off his tracks. So as you can see, I've taken one hit so far. The enemies have not paid attention to me at all, and because this tank has good DPM, you really need to have the enemies focusing on you, because you're an easy target to take out, and if they don't do it, they're gonna have a very, very hard time defeating you in this tank. So now it's basically just cleaning up the KV-1S. He's gone now, and this was a pretty good game. I think I picked up 3,500 damage, but let's get into some more action and see some tier 10 gameplay. So here we are on our third gameplay of this review, and this time we're on Black Goldville. We have a Tiger 2 who's he's complaining a bit about the matchmaking. He doesn't like being bottom tier, but I tell him it's nice because it's a great challenge, and I really feel that way, because when you're bottom tier, often you don't get as much attention as the top tier tanks on your team, and that gives you the opportunity to really maximize the impact that you can have in a battle. And these kind of battles for me are the ones that really make this game fun. So that's just my opinion, but if you have another opinion, feel free to drop a comment or send me a message on the Wargaming forum, and we can discuss it. So I like to take this position to get the early spots, and I dunk the first shot of the IS-7. And when I'm in this position where I am not all the way towards the small bump in the front of me, the enemies have a very hard time spotting me. Even the Centurion, who has a 260 meter view range, can't spot me when I'm in this position. So I managed to put one shell into the E100, decided to go for him again. I tried to track him, but unfortunately I missed the tracks. So, but I get another opportunity to shoot him at the turret, and I actually landed 3 shots on him without really getting into any problems whatsoever. So now I can see that we have 3 enemies in the city. They are not going to be able to shoot me if I stay here, and from here I can get nice shots into the enemy. And I decide to pop the adrenaline and start making use of the great DPM. I want to go for the kill shot on the E100, but I don't manage to do so because of the Centurion. So I instead just start engaging him, take off his tracks, keep him stuck there, and I know the E50M is going to be able to shoot him as well. Pop out again for another shot. Unfortunately, the Conqueror, he gets back into cover, so I don't have a shot on him, but I do manage to hit the Centurion once more and try to take him out, but miss my shot into the rock, unfortunately. So pretty much so far I've had a good impact in this tier 10 game. And you can actually, I really feel this tank, it's more fun to play as a bottom tier tank than it is as a top tier tank, because when you're top tier you have another level of pressure on you. You need to be the one who's impacting the game all the time, and that can be difficult, especially in a tank like the STA-1, which has basically no armor and only average DPM compared to the tanks that are one tier above it. So the E100 he got taken out pretty quickly, and I decided to push quite aggressively here and see if I can make this a nice game for myself. I spot the Tiger 2, and I also see that our Tiger 2 he's pushing aggressively towards his Tiger 2, so I don't want to be engaging him. I decide instead to go for the IS-8, who's making the life of our Jagd Tiger really tough. So he's putting some good shots into the Jagd Tiger, and I need to help this guy out before he dies. We have two people standing on the top of the hill, not really helping. So I decide, okay, let's go for the tracking shot. I miss it, unfortunately, or I only damage the track. So no luck there. Anyway, you can see that this IS-8 he's taken out now. So this was a pretty good game, showcasing how I think this should be played on a tier 10 map. So on to the final game of this review, which is another tier 10 game. This time we're on Castilla. But just to follow up on this one, I did manage to do almost 3000 damage, second class mastery, and had a pretty good game considering I was bottom tier. So anyways, here we go, we're on Castilla, and in this map, in this kind of a setup where I'm bottom tier medium tank, I think it's a good idea to go up near the church. I can escape from multiple routes up there, and I can also use my great gun depression to shoot down at enemies who are trying to make their way to the cap circle, or alternatively who are trying to push all the way through to the river area. Unfortunately, it also means that I don't really have the opportunity to shoot at enemies who go to the far eastern side of the map because of the obstacles, the mountains, and so forth. So I'm gonna have to hope that the enemies try to stay inside the middle area of this map. And you can see the pretty good mobility here. It's not great, but it's decent, and it is kind of a redeeming factor about this tank, because without the mobility it would really be a terrible tank in my opinion. So I get spotted and try to take a snapshot on the Jagd Tiger, but instead I get a shot in return from the Centurion 1, who's up on the hill. So I now know that we have two top tier TVs pushing this way, and because we were in this position, along with the FV4202, we were able to give our team vision on this Jagdpanzer, and that meant that he got taken down to half of his health very quickly. So we spot the mouse all the way across the map. We have no chance to shoot him, so instead we start shooting at the Centurion 1. The Centurion is a very lightly armored tank as well, although it does have better armor than I do. So, but I'm not having any problems penetrating it. So all of a sudden IS-8 appears behind me, and I'm a bit concerned because he can really hurt me. So I'm hoping that my FV teammate, he's gonna come and help me with him. I decided to wait, create a bit of an ambush, and take a good shot at him. The FV, he's come around to help me now, and the IS-8 is looking at me, so that means the FV is gonna get a free shot on him, and he manages to put a good shell into him. So I know that the IS-8 shot, so I go down, take off his tracks, and now I just decide, okay, time to just wait it out and just punish this guy. So I try to take off his tracks again, but not enough damage to rip the tracks apart, but I do manage to land one more shot. So you can see by the way I'm playing this tank, I like to keep on the high ground, and the high ground is really your best friend in this tank. So you can use the great gun depression and also the pretty good mobility to peek-a-boom at enemies. Anyway, we see that our team is doing quite well, or they were, but now we're all of a sudden we get down by one tank, and the enemies managed to take out one of our tier 9s and one of our tier 8s pretty quickly. So yeah, we try to engage, and I see the Centurion pushing through, and I have a small opening here to shoot at him. I want to keep him tracked, but unfortunately he does repair his track, and I don't manage to blow them off again. So so far I think we've done around 1500 damage, something like that, but we can still have a great impact in this game
because of the great view range, but also the very good penetration on the heat rounds that this tank gets. So the heat rounds, they get 275 millimeters of heat, of penetration. And I decided to go and show this Jagdpanzer E100 just how good these heat shells are. So I'm not gonna have any problems penetrating him. He spots me, oh, and I'm very, very lucky that his shell flies into the rock in front of me. I load an AP round because I want to try to take off his tracks, but I don't manage to do so. But instead I managed to take a shot in the Centurion, who's very, very low on health now. So we're actually still down by one tank, and they have two top tier heavies, or top tier TDs, and I'm a bit concerned that these guys are gonna create problems for me. But luckily, as you will see, I managed to get into a good position and take both of them out, take both of the top tier TDs out, and also finishing off the STA-1 that's left on the enemy team. So in the course of this video, I hope you've learned a thing or two about the STA-1. It really is not a great tank, if you ask me. It's not bad, but it doesn't feel great. It doesn't excel at anything apart from gun depression. And gun depression is very nice to have, but it's not very nice to have if you don't have a strong turret with which you can bounce shells reliably. So I think that this tank is going to be most fun to play when you are bottom tier, and very, very difficult to play when you're top tier, especially considering that the heavy tanks such as the IS-3 and the VK4502A, they can actually almost, you can't really circle them, so you're gonna have a hard time taking them out effectively without running into some big problems. So we spot the Jagdpanzer 100. He takes a shot at us, but we've gotten down to 2 shots now, and I load the dirty heat shells again and decide, okay, just finish him off. So this tank I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep it in my garage. I don't really feel it performs as well as, for example, the Pershing, which has some turret armor that you can use to bounce with. But it's definitely been a good experience to play it, and I really feel it plays much like the Leopard 1. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you did, feel free to drop a comment or maybe even subscribe to the channel, and I wish you all a happy New Year's Eve. Bye.